Hello Year 9 and any other students of Second World War history. It's Mr. C here and bienvenue from Dunkirk beach. It's quite a dark grey day today and conditions wouldn't have been too dissimilar in the late spring of 1940 when 300,000 Allied troops were stuck on this beach. The remorseless, marauding Nazi Wehrmacht had crossed Belgium and was marching through France, pushing the Allied troops further and further away. And the majority of the British troops, under the name of the British Expeditionary Force, the BEF, were stuck, cornered here on this beach, surrounded by Germans. The only way back was from the sea. And so something needed to be done to get these soldiers back. Now, Britain had a new Prime Minister. Winston Churchill had just come to power, Neville Chamberlain pushed aside with his appeasement policies, and Churchill's view was never give up. He wanted to fight. Chamberlain was more happy to make a deal with Hitler, but Churchill said no. And so he told the British Army to get back, to hurry back, because of course he wanted to fight the Nazis, and in order to fight the Nazis, you need an army yourself, and he needed to get that army off this beach, and the only way to do that was by boat from the pier. The official name for the evacuation of Dunkirk was Operation Dynamo, and that was simply because the commanders of the operation were based in Dover Castle across the channel, and they shared a room with a dynamo electrical generator. So they thought, well, let's just call it Operation Dynamo, which perhaps is not as exciting as you might think. The conditions are pretty bad out here, wind and rain, but I am now on the Mole, the pier that was used the battleships would come alongside here and thousands of men would gather along here. Dunkirk beach is behind me here. They would have gone along the seawall here to come along to load on the battleships. This is what at first was happening when Churchill issued that order, battleship after battleship, cruiser after cruiser. The English Channel at this point is quite narrow. England, you can't quite see it on a day like today, unfortunately, but you probably might be able to just see it on a clearer day, although we're quite flat here at sea level. And the boats would have come in along here. Lurking in the waters, of course, were German U-boats ready to torpedo those cruisers. And in the skies over Dunkirk, the wide skies there would have been the Luftwaffe ready to bomb. But here we are at the Mole. This just about survived the evacuation. There are many shipwrecks and holes within it, but they did keep the Mole open. A man called Commander Bolton kept it open. But even though the cruise ships were arriving, the cruisers and the destroyers, that was not enough to get the hundreds of thousands of men off that beach. Another plan had to be hatched. I've just come land a little bit, just to the centre of Dunkirk, most of which has been rebuilt since our time. There's the town hall behind me, but the Catholic Cathedral here has got some interesting remnants still from the war, quite a bit of shrapnel, and indeed this wall here I think has got the most interesting examples of it, quite clearly remnants from the war, and I think this is an amazing testament to see how much the fighting was, and we're only about 10-15 minutes away from the beach that way, so the fighting got very intense, very, very close to the beach. Now, there is a bit of a debate amongst historians about the Dunkirk evacuation. Was it an amazing victory and the pride of Britain at the time, or was it a humiliating military defeat? Now, those people who say it was a victory say that, well, look at the numbers. 332,000 Allied troops were saved from this beach. That is an incredible number. Churchill thought it was only going to be about 30,000. 10 times as many were actually saved. So Britain had kept its army. It may have had to retreat, but it kept its army. And that army, of course, rallied again 4 years later for Normandy and D-Day and led to the war, the winning of the war. So Britain's victory perhaps started here, oddly with a defeat, but enough to keep the army rallied. The other reason why it's considered a victory is the Dunkirk spirit, the spirit of the British people willing to come out in their little boat and protect and get their soldiers back. And Churchill made a famous speech where he said, "We shall fight them on the landing craft, we shall fight them on the beaches, we will never surrender." And that is the mentality that Britain now has. They were firmly involved in the Second World War. Without Dunkirk, there wouldn't have been a British victory in the Second World War. There would have probably been a German one. Those that suggest this was a defeat point to the fact that the Nazis won. Hitler marched into Paris a few weeks later. Britain was pushed off the continent, not to return for another 4 years. Churchill himself, even in that speech, said wars are not won on retreats. And also that mentality, that Dunkirk spirit, yes, okay, but also Britain was alone. Britain was now cowering on its own from the Nazi bombers. So maybe they did win the war, but it was a long time yet. And so perhaps Dunkirk could be seen as a militarily a defeat. Well, let me know what you think regarding the victory or defeat aspect in the comment section. Thank you for watching about the Dunkirk evacuation. I'm off to get dry and warm somewhere. See you later.